You are looking at the last images of a 7-year-old girl who, in December 2022, disappeared from her home under strange circumstances. And just a few days later, the investigation revealed a completely disturbing detail. And that's how one of the cases that has had the biggest impact, not only on the state of Texas, but on the entire United States began. A tremendously disturbing case that ended in an exemplary sentence. If you want to know everything that happened, stay with me until the end of the video. Hello everyone, how are you? My name is Lesma. I hope you are doing very well. As always, I'm very happy to be here with you for another day. Very grateful that you are watching me wherever you are. Today we have a case that happened in the United States, that of Athena Strand. Join me to see all the details. Athena Presley Monroe Strand was born on May 23, 2015, in a rural community in the state of Oklahoma in the United States. She was the daughter of a man named Jacob and a woman named Maitland, and shortly after her birth, her parents separated and formed new families. This didn't prevent Athena's early years from being very good, marked by a lot of love from both the family her mother had formed and that of her father. In addition to that, she had a very good relationship with everyone, and they said she was a girl with an amazing personality. By the year 2022, Athena was in her first grade of elementary school, and her teachers at school said she was a girl with a lot of potential. A little girl who made friends easily and, on top of that, brightened up the whole classroom. When Athena's parents separated, her father moved to Texas. And although there was a lot of distance between them, they actually got along very well, and he saw his daughter several months a year. In that year, 2022, when she was 7 years old, she had to move to Texas with her father for a few months due to a health issue. But at the end of the day, she was a very happy girl who had a great time with both of her families and had a very close circle that loved her very much. And besides that, she was doing very well in life. Her father's home, located in North Texas, was surrounded by farms, cattle fields, wooded areas, and small ponds. It was a very quiet area. The plan was for Athena to return to Oklahoma with her mother in December of that same year. However, this could never happen. And on November 30th, 2022, Jacob, Athena's father, was working in the fields when he received an alarming call. His wife told him that Athena had disappeared. She told him she had been looking for her for an hour. The woman told him she thought the girl was in her room, and at some point during the day, she went to look for her and couldn't find her. And it was at that point that she began searching on her own with the help of her siblings and other people in the house, but they couldn't find her. Jacob, extremely nervous and thinking this was not normal behavior for his daughter, called the emergency number to report her missing. And quickly, several emergency services units and also police officers were at the house taking statements from everyone there. And the girl was officially reported as a missing person. From that moment, the official search began. A poster with her photograph was printed and began to be distributed in the surrounding area. In addition to that, police officers, volunteers, neighbors, and family friends began searching for her in the vicinity of the house. But it was a pretty tough search. In that month in Texas, it gets dark very quickly, and on top of that, temperatures reach extremes, making it very difficult to conduct the search. The next day, December 1st, things were no different. It seemed as if the girl had vanished into thin air. It was at that moment that the sheriff's office decided to activate an Amber Alert. In it, they described her as a minor in danger and indicated that she had been last seen at her home, in addition to describing the clothes she was wearing. Meanwhile, authorities did not rule out the possibility that someone had taken her. But several media outlets, even though authorities had not declared any of this, began to spread the hypothesis that the girl had run away from home after having an argument with her stepmother. Even in these same media outlets, it began to be said that Athena already had a history of running away from her father's house, and it was said that she had many problems with her stepmother. It had to be the girl's own mother who came out to deny all this information, saying that they had never had problems with Athena's father's partner, neither she nor the girl, and besides that, the little girl didn't usually run away from home, that this was not habitual behavior for her. Be that as it may, the police continued the search, using drones, specialized equipment, trained dogs, and everything they had at hand to find the little girl quickly. But it seemed that these searches were not yielding the results they wanted, and they also began to feel more and more desperate. In addition to that, it was also said that both Jacob and Ashley, Athena's father and stepmother, were cooperating fully with the investigation, and it was explained that police were searching the 2.5 hectares of the family property, including the home, the interior of the house, under the structure, and all nearby areas. It's worth clarifying a bit here that the layout of the property was a bit confusing, so to speak. There was an old abandoned house on the land where no one lived. It had broken windows, was falling apart, and needed to be demolished. Apparently, that was Jacob's plan, but he hadn't been able to finalize it. So the family was living in a trailer on the property. In addition to that, it was said that Athena and her 10-year-old stepsister were temporarily staying in an unfinished shed located a few yards from the main residence while all the necessary remodeling was being done, and then the family could move into the big house that was going to be demolished and rebuilt. It was during those first days of the investigation that there was a small breakthrough, which was that several dogs managed to pick up Athena's scent. It looked like the girl had walked around the property, but after a while the scent disappeared, and the dogs could no longer track her. Really, what at one point was seen as a breakthrough, at that very specific moment, didn't help at all, as it only had investigators going in circles on the property and didn't really give them any indication of what could have happened to the girl. In addition to that, authorities also commented that by that point, the investigation had to become a criminal investigation. More than 24 hours had passed, and at that moment it could already be officially confirmed that there was a possibility that a crime had been committed, and that possibility was beginning to gain more and more strength. In addition to that, it was also said that a large search operation was underway. Many people were being interviewed and many clues were being sought. In the end, the case took a definitive turn. Investigators assured that a criminal act had occurred and that they had to know what had happened to the girl. In addition to that, it was also said that a large search operation was underway. Many people were being interviewed and many clues were being sought. In the end, the case took a definitive turn. Investigators assured that a criminal act had occurred and that they had to know what had happened to the girl. In addition to that, they also said they had information from some security cameras in which a delivery truck could be seen. This delivery truck had been tracked to the driver. It was said that on the afternoon the girl disappeared, this man had been making some deliveries in the area, including Athena's and her family's house. He had made some deliveries of Christmas gifts, specifically a gift that was for the little girl. Authorities commented that at that moment he was an important subject in the investigation and that they had to start investigating more and more what had happened, because at the end of the day he had the perfect excuse. He had arrived at the house, he was a person who could be interpreted as trustworthy, and he had had every probability and possibility of taking the girl. The subject was then located and arrested. His name was Tanner Lynn Horner, a 21-year-old man who worked as a delivery driver for a well-known shipping company. During questioning, he ended up confessing to his involvement in the little girl's disappearance. In the version Tanner gave to authorities, he said that he had indeed arrived at Athena's house. He commented that the girl had gotten in the way of his vehicle and that when backing up, he hadn't realized she was there and had run over her, taking her life. The man in this first version claimed that he had been very scared when he saw that the girl had no pulse, so he decided to put her body in the delivery truck and then continue with his deliveries as if nothing had happened, and later he disposed of the girl's body. This means that while everyone was looking for Athena, while she was on the news, while the family was asking for the girl to return alive and well, she was already dead, and this man knew where she was and said nothing. He wasn't really a very well-known person in the society there in that community, but he was someone who was aware of everything that was going on. During that same interrogation, this man gave the location of the minor's body. Officers went to the place he had marked and indeed found the body there. After that, the body was transferred to forensic services to proceed with the investigation. And a few hours later, the press conference was held where it was said both that Tanner was going to remain in police custody and indeed that the body found was that of little Athena. Obviously, all this news left the community completely shocked. After taking the girl's life, this man had been working and had been among them very quietly, as normally as possible, and they thought that at the end of the day, that made him a monster. Immediately, people began to investigate Tanner's life. It was learned that he didn't work directly for the shipping company but was an independent contractor, and it emerged that he had a young son and was engaged. Profiles with messages full of indignation and anger also began to spread in the media and on social networks, and some posts and testimonies began to emerge from people who claimed to have had disturbing experiences with him in the past. Among the testimonies, there was one that generated a lot of repercussion, one from a woman named Shia Marie. She said she had been publicly warning about Tanner for years and claimed he had engaged in inappropriate behavior with certain young and vulnerable girls. After learning what had happened to little Athena, this woman began again to speak explicitly about what Tanner did to girls and young women, and decided to start asking for justice for the minor and her family. Comments directed at Tanner's fiancé also emerged on social networks. Many people claimed that she already knew about the rumors and previous accusations against the man, but had simply turned a deaf ear. In the end, Athena's death ended up being tragic and incomprehensible, and it completely shook the state of Texas. Community support for the girl's family was practically massive, and thousands of people not only from Texas but from all over the country sent messages of support and condolences to the girl's family. Several public buildings and iconic structures were also lit up in pink, the little girl's favorite color. On December 5th, a day was also organized in which hundreds of people dressed in pink to show support for the family. And they also held massive vigils in memory of the little girl. Obviously, the family was also shocked, and 3 days later, Athena's mother spoke at a press conference, recalling that the property where everything happened had been the same land where her ex-husband, the girl's father, had grown up, a place where they had always felt safe. Then, to end her message, she said that her daughter was deeply loved, not only by her but also by her father and her family. After the conference, various court documents related to the case also began to be made public. In them, it was revealed that the delivery truck had cameras installed by a third-party vendor capable of recording continuous 1-minute clips. This material would be key to the investigation. And it was revealed that in these recordings, a very different version from the initial one given by Tanner could be seen, since in the videos the man could be seen taking Athena away completely conscious, and both were also seen in the vehicle, reportedly having a conversation whose nature was not revealed at that time. Faced with this new information, authorities decided to press Tanner again in another interrogation, and in the end he ended up saying that indeed he had used violence, he didn't say what kind, against the girl inside the truck. He said he ran over her, but although it hadn't been like in his official version where he had killed her on the spot, he was very afraid that the girl would tell her parents that he had been the one who ran over her, and then he would have to pay them a lot of money, lose his license and his job and many other things. So he said that indeed he had run over the little girl. At that moment he hadn't caused a serious injury, nor one that would cause her to die. He had put her in the vehicle, and after that he had taken her life by using violence. As I say, he didn't specify how, nor was it specified in the public records at that time how he had taken her life. In the end, this change of version didn't help the man at all. He had already lied to the police once, and only because new evidence had come out that he didn't know existed, had he given more details, let's put it that way, although they weren't really real details of what had happened. In the end, a very exhaustive investigation began by the authorities. What they wanted to know was what had actually happened, so that the girl would get the justice she deserved. Thus, the investigation progressed, and Tanner was increasingly cornered with these versions he had given. In the end, he formally pleaded guilty to aggravated kidnapping and capital murder, thus avoiding a trial focused on determining his guilt. From that moment on, the process shifted to focus on the sentence the man should receive. And it was in early May 2026 when Tanner finally faced justice. It was here in this trial, since they had to prove, as I say, not Tanner's guilt, because he had already pleaded guilty, but the prosecution had to show all the aggravating factors. They were seeking the death penalty, so they had to prove that the crime had been horrible. And something that helped them a lot to prove this was the forensic results performed on little Athena's body. It was determined that the girl had been sexually abused, that there was male DNA on her body, and that this DNA was Tanner's. It was also said that she had suffered different types of violence. And with just this, obviously it could be shown that this man should not be in society because he was a danger to everyone. In addition to that, we have already talked about the security cameras inside the truck. But in the trial, many more details were revealed. First of all, thanks to these recordings, it could be observed that Tanner had deliberately covered an interior camera that the vehicle has before taking Athena. And in addition to that, in other videos he was seen cleaning the truck. This drew particular attention, as it suggested that he was fully aware of his actions and gave the impression that he knew what he was doing and didn't want to be recorded on video. And besides that, they didn't want any evidence left in the truck that could obviously lead him to prison. But definitely one of the most shocking moments of the trial was when an audio recorded inside the truck was heard, which was recorded just before Tanner attacked Athena. She asks him if he wants to hurt her. Hearing that question was devastating for everyone in the courtroom, and it was evident that at that moment the girl already understood that something was not right, but she didn't fully understand what was happening. She simply wanted to make sense of the situation and know why what was happening was happening. The girl is also heard asking this man where they were going, and he answers that it doesn't matter. On another occasion, the girl also told him that she wanted her mom. That was another of the most painful moments for all the people who were following the case. A girl of just 7 years old, scared, who didn't know what was happening, who simply wanted to go with the person she felt was the person who could take care of her, which was her mother. At that moment, as reported by local media, many of the people on the jury began to cry. And in addition to that, several family members and friends who were in the courtroom also had to leave. Even the girl's mother was asked if she had been able to listen to all these fragments, and she said no. Really, in the courtroom, everyone was emotionally destroyed by what had happened. It was a case that was very well documented thanks to these cameras and thanks to these recordings. And perhaps if it hadn't been for these cameras and recordings, there wouldn't have been so much awareness of all the horror the girl experienced. Seeking to perhaps lift the weight off his shoulders, Tanner during the trial also spoke of an alleged alter ego he called Zero. According to him, Zero manifested as a voice in his head, and it was he who had taken the girl's life.
I would see that little voice again.
Tanner wanted to appeal to what many people do in these trials, which was mental health. However, the prosecution presented that those statements were not backed by diagnoses or psychological tests. They also showed a note Tanner had written, where he said he wanted to take his own life. This added another layer to the image the public was beginning to form about who Tanner was. Meanwhile, more emotional testimonies arrived from Athena's family, who spoke about her personality, and the joy she brought to their lives. After all these testimonies were given, as is natural, it was the defense's turn. Let's remember something very important here, and that is that they could no longer say Tanner was innocent. He had already pleaded guilty. The defense's task was not to imply that this man had not taken Athena's life. That was already known. The task they had was to minimize Tanner's actions as much as they could, so that they wouldn't give him the death penalty. But for him to go free or be declared innocent was already, as I say, completely impossible. So for this, since they didn't have many psychological or psychiatric records of this man, they did something that many defense attorneys do, and that was to go back to Tanner's childhood. They said he had been a boy with many problems. The one who took the stand to tell things about this man's childhood was his own mother. The woman admitted that she had used drugs, and had also drunk during pregnancy in the first few months, because she didn't know she was pregnant. She also said that Tanner had suffered a lot at school, as he was diagnosed with autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and this had caused his way of being to make the kids at school pick on him, insult him, and make him feel bad. She also said that Tanner had had a lot of trouble socializing, and that he simply had not been a normal child. She also commented that she knew he had hurt Athena and that she was not going to justify it, that she was very angry with him. Teachers, specialists, and experts were also called to testify, describing the same pattern. They all agreed that indeed, Tanner had had social difficulties and behavioral problems during his childhood. In addition to that, a neuroscientist spoke, showing the jury a brain scan of the man and pointing to an area related to emotional regulation and social behavior. According to the expert, that part of his brain was 20% smaller than normal. It was also explained that this region plays a very important role in impulse control, decision-making, emotional processing, and the ability to interpret social situations. And it was at that point that it began to become clear what the defense wanted. For them, their main argument was that if that part of the brain doesn't function correctly, it could affect the way someone responds in moments when they need to regulate their behavior and emotions. For example, the conditions that can lead someone to commit a violent crime. And for the defense, this was the explanation for what Tanner had done to the girl. The prosecution responded strongly during cross-examination, and prosecutors insisted that none of that meant Tanner did not understand his actions. They could be relevant factors for his development, yes, but they did not show a sufficient explanation of why he committed such a horrible crime. Furthermore, they said that if the man had already pleaded guilty in full possession of his faculties, it was because he was aware of what he had done. Thus, on May 5, 2026, the jury went out to deliberate, and in almost a few hours, unanimously, they argued that the man represented a threat to society, that he had a propensity to reoffend and commit acts of criminal violence. That was how they decided there were no mitigating factors to justify a life sentence, and Tanner was sentenced to the death penalty. Subsequently, he was transferred to death row at one of the most well-known maximum security prisons in the state of Texas. However, the sentence did not mean a definitive closure in the case. Under state law, any conviction of this kind automatically triggered an extensive appeals process. Some legal specialists pointed out that the procedure could drag on for years, including subsequent reviews and federal appeals. In fact, just a few days later, on May 12th, Tanner formally filed through his attorneys his first appeal before the state's highest court. And at this moment, the case stands like this: a man declared guilty who has a long way to appeal, but who surely will achieve nothing and will end up being executed. And well, boys and girls, that's it for today's video. A very sad case like all the ones we bring, very shocking. More than anything, when we talk about minors, about children who die in such harsh, tragic, and violent ways as in this case. A person who in the end was supposed to be a trustworthy person in the community ended up being a monster. Now, did he get an exemplary sentence? Yes, there is a long road of appeals ahead. But really, in this type of case, appeals almost never lead to anything. So surely this man will be taken, well, he is already on death row, and surely he will be executed at some point. It won't be in the near future, surely many years will pass, but at the end of the day he's going to be in prison and he's not going to hurt any other person, which is the important thing in all of this. In the end, it's very sad that a girl's life had to be lost for this person to be taken off the streets. If you found this video informative, remember to leave a like, remember to subscribe if you aren't already. I update 3 or 4 times a week, and if you are subscribed, you will get a notification every time I upload a video. You can also follow me on my other projects and on my other networks. Now, see you in another case. Bye-bye.